The Nintendo Switch. Just like that sentimental blanket you've had since a baby, but really it's just 3 bits of thread barely sticking together. The Nintendo Switch has become more like an old friend to the millions of gamers who were lucky enough to be acquainted with one. You see, as we turn this metaphorical corner towards the Nintendo Switch 2, I'm honestly a little surprised, caught off guard, I'd even say, that we've actually had 8 full years with the original Switch. You see, as we approach the launch of its successor, I can't help but feel like it's going to be the end of an era. You know, as home consoles go, this is one of the longest generations we've ever had, and it feels both incredibly short and also a lifetime away. I mean, I just look at the fact that the Nintendo Switch has provided us with years of memories and lots of games. And I mean, some of the best games of all time have had their go with this machine, and we've seen the greatest efforts, I think, ever in gaming, where third-party ports have been ported over to this console. I mean, if we sit here and we put it bluntly, the Nintendo Switch's success is substantial, and to some it felt like it was inevitable. But as I take a look back over the lifetime of the Switch, the ups and downs, the kind of flaws and the great highs and all of that, I am filled with hope for the future, not only for the Switch, but for the Switch 2. And that's not only because for most gamers the Switch 2 is everything they've asked for, that is if you ignore the attention-seeking haters, by the way, but it's because in this situation, making this video, I'm presented with 2 options really with how I can take it. And those options are, do I A, present it like a funeral? Because, I mean, we're looking back on the Switch and we're at the end of its life. Or do I present it as a celebration? A look at everything this wonderful little underpowered machine has given us? And that's exactly what I'm going to do, because contrary to some people's belief, the Switch isn't dead. And it hasn't been dead for the last few years. So let's go all the way back then. Let's start right at the beginning. 2017. After months of hype building and teasers, and there was a wonderfully in-depth video showing the Switch being used, and I'll cut clips of it in here and there, the Switch was finally released on the 3rd of March worldwide, which I think is a really interesting thing because it was released worldwide. If you look back at some of the other consoles like the Wii U or the Wii and things like that, the launches are staggered around the world, but this was the first proper one where everywhere in the world on the same day, majority anyway, it was released on the same day. And going back to that point I made earlier about things seeming inevitable, it sold 1.5 million consoles just in the first week. Now, just to preface things, while I am going to tell you some general facts kind of about the 8-year lifespan of the Nintendo Switch, this video is mostly going to focus on me and my experiences with the Switch. I mean, it is my favourite console of all time, and I can only really give you my perspective on this console. I mean, I can look at other YouTubers, I can look at other people, their opinions on the internet, and they are all very much the same. They followed the generation from beginning to end, and my perspective is a little bit different, so I can't really copy and paste what they have, but I feel like my conclusion is still the same. So, with all that in mind, coming back to the point I just made previously, I feel I am obligated to tell you that of those first 1.5 million consoles that were sold, I bought exactly none of them. That's right, none of them. You see, in 2017, that was the year I turned 17. And it was this period in my life, it was a bit of a lull in gaming. I had gained some independence. I was struggling with issues at home. I went through that typical teenage phase of wanting to be out with friends all of the time instead of being stuck at home, and so the launch kind of just passed me by. I mean, of course, I grew up as a big Nintendo fan and a fan of gaming in general, and I knew it was coming out. I remember the billboards actually around my town showing the console, and it had the release date on the bottom, and I even remember acknowledging the release date on the day that it came out. I remember being aware of the fact that if I wanted to, I could go to the shop and I could go and pick it up. But up until this point, I'd never really heard of The Legend of Zelda. I didn't really know about how amazing a game Breath of the Wild was going to turn out to be. So that didn't really appeal to me. None of the other launch titles interested me either. And so kind of March 2017, that just passed right on by. And it was only about a year later, on a whim, when I had some money just burning a hole in my pocket, I eventually went and picked one up. And so by this point, it's 2018, I had heard of Breath of the Wild at this point, and I'd even dabbled with it a little bit on a Wii U that I, coincidentally, I had also bought on a whim, and I did enjoy the game quite a lot. I didn't do that much, I maybe did 10, 15 shrines and then sold the Wii U on again, because that's kind of the cycle I was going through at the time. But while I did enjoy Breath of the Wild with that, when I bought the Switch, I couldn't afford that game on the Switch as well. So the only games I actually had on the console were Rocket League and Minecraft, and both of those I just wasn't really interested in. So I mean, kind of at the end of the day, what ended up happening with me in the Switch was that I wrote the Switch off as boring and feeling a bit cheap. I mean, this was before the updated, the V2 LCD Switch, because that came out in 2019, so even though it was only a year old, at most anyway, I don't know when it's produced, I bought it secondhand, but it creaked a lot, and when you were playing it in handheld, the Joy-Cons just had a habit of detaching themselves without the need to press the button on the back. So at a time in my life where my priorities were elsewhere, I sold my Nintendo Switch. I sold it at a massive loss just to get some money back, and I decided just to spend it on my other interests. But then COVID hit. And COVID, the whole pandemic in general, that was a weird time for us all. I mean, being locked indoors, isolated from friends and family, the whole world kind of suffered, and while I myself, I was struggling with the isolation just like we all were, but this was around the time in my life, I was about 19, 20, and I was kind of going through a lot of personal problems. I had been kicked out of my parents' house. We weren't getting on very well. I ended a long-term relationship. I was living with a friend of mine. I had just lost my job, and then just to top it all off, my parents announced they were getting a divorce. And so, while I don't want to delve into personal things and like getting to like make this all a sad, depressing video, I would rather just keep this channel as kind of escape from life's troubles, but I feel like it's important to set the stage for why I then started to fall in love with the Switch and where my kind of relationship with it went since. So suddenly, with all this newfound time that I had on my hands and the kind of pit of depression that I had fallen into, there were lots of gaps that I needed to fill in my life. And I decided I was going to turn to an old friend that I haven't spoken to in a long time, and that was gaming. So I hadn't really played games properly in about 5 or 6 years at this point, apart from some kind of boredom-fueled look-ins throughout my kind of mid to late teen years. But it was at this point, you know, kind of approaching age of 20, COVID had hit, I decided I was going to get back into it. And it was hard, really. I had spent so long the years before, I'd replaced the kind of entertainment that gaming gave me with lots of other things in my life. And while we all had the outside taken away from us, I found it hard to adjust to just staying indoors and playing games again. But I gave it a go. Obviously, I had no choice. I couldn't go out and do anything else. So I started with a gaming PC, and that was more so I could have the ability to do other things other than gaming. But I played through a couple of games on there. Most of them were racing ones because I had a wheel, so I played through things like Formula 1 and Assetto Corsa. But after a while, I started delving into older consoles again. So I picked up a PlayStation 2. I fell in love with Metal Gear Solid 2, that was really good. I went back and started playing Gran Turismo 4 again, which is really nice. And I even briefly had an original Xbox that I gave a go. I didn't like that console. I never had one as a kid, didn't grow up with it, didn't think it was that great. But eventually, on October 4th of 2020, I decided it was time to give the Nintendo Switch another go. I mean, there were so many more games released that were of interest to me. I mean, Animal Crossing, that had come out earlier that year, and that is one of my favourite series kind of games of all time. The Super Mario 3D All-Stars pack, that had come out a couple of weeks before I bought the Switch. And of course, Super Mario Sunshine, that's one of my favourite games of all time. So I thought, you know, limited funds, but those are some big games I can sink a lot of time into. Those are the ones I'll start with, and I'll go into that. So I had my Switch, and I had Animal Crossing, and I had 3 of the best 3D Mario games that had ever been released. I was bored. Despite the franchises being something I loved, I was still bored with the thing, and I later came to realise, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I was dealing with a lot of depression. So I was struggling to find the enjoyment in the things I normally did. But I did continue every now and then. I went along, I picked up the Switch, I played a few minutes of Animal Crossing, or I played a bit of Mario Sunshine, but I didn't really play it much. And so this was October I bought it, and by the January of 2021, so a couple of months, I'd only put about 10 hours into my Switch. And my thoughts kind of quickly turned to moving the system on again. I mean, the kind of thing I would do at the time is I'd chuck my money into whatever I could find that would make me feel good for about 5 minutes, and then I'd sell it at a big loss just to get some money back quickly, and then I'd rinse and repeat. But something stopped me though. So around this time, January of 2021, I moved out of my friend's house. I moved into a tiny room in a shared flat. I still had no job, and when I moved I only had enough money for the first week of food and first week of rent. And it was tough, and I did consider selling my Nintendo Switch just to get by, but I knew, I had this niggling thought in the back of my head that if I did that, I would never ever be able to afford to get it back. So I decided just to struggle on through, make it through, and keep my Switch. That way, you know, I'd still have something to enjoy when I came home. So I kept the Switch, and after a little while, things started to improve. Found a job, and I decided to go and reward myself. And I had a look online and found a used copy. It was cartridge only. It's about £20 locally for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, as a little side note, there's a lesson I've learned with games over the last few years, and while this is not going to be sound financial advice, but it will help to improve your enjoyment of a certain console that you may have regrets about purchasing. And the advice is this: if you're bored with the console, buy more games. My first Switch I thought sucked, but I only had Minecraft on it. And the second Switch was better, but it still sucked. You know, I had 2 decent games, you know, in Animal Crossing and Mario, but there's only so much Mario that can entertain me in one go. It's one of those games, unless it's Sunshine, that I can just play all the time, but the other ones I have to do in bite little chunks. And Animal Crossing, I couldn't figure out how to build the town hall. There must have been a period of time where I stopped playing for a couple of weeks and I forgot you were meant to kind of hit the rocks for bits of rock, and then the trees for like bits of wood, and then build up. So it took me months to unlock the town hall, so I just didn't have any fun with it. But I mean, even in recent years, I regretted buying my PS5. I had nothing to play on it. Again, the main reason I bought the PS5 is I really wanted to play Gran Turismo 7, played it, loved it, great, but then I had nothing else to play on it. And eventually I started investing more money into that device. I invested more money into the Switch, as I'm alluding to. but it gave me a reason to then love it. You know, I didn't have a reason to play it with the stuff I already had, so I went and I found reasons to play it and then fall in love with it. And that is exactly what Breath of the Wild did for me. Finally, I had found a game where I had the ability, I could traverse and explore a massive open world, truly massive. I could figure out all the puzzles, I could change the landscape with I really liked the divine beasts, so I could sit there once I'd unlocked it and done the dungeon and things like that. I could see it in the distance from miles away shooting its laser at the castle. And so you even had that, it was like a massive list of the shrines, like an addictingly long list of shrines that all needed exploring. And Hyrule kind of just became my escape. It was my place that I could go, I could hide in, escape all of my kind of life's troubles, I could uncover its secrets and explore it to my heart's content. And it was really this game that I then allowed a love affair to spiral from the Switch, one that's still going strong today. I mean, just look at this, I never upgraded. I'm nearly 5 years down the line now. I'm still rocking that same LCD Switch that I bought during COVID. I never bought an OLED. My wife has now got the Switch Lite, but I've kept it all this time. I mean, it's a bit dinged up now, and the stand doesn't stand, and the battery doesn't last as long as it used to. And I dropped it once, cracked the Joy-Con casing, and replaced them with these NES style replacements that you just swap the internals. So it's still the original Joy-Cons, I just swapped them into the new case. At one point it was slid down the side of a sofa, and my nieces and nephew were kind of jumping on the sofa, and it pulled the rubber sticks off. And I've tried to stick them back on, but it just looks worse for wear. It's a bit tired. Interestingly enough though, I've never ever had a problem with stick drift. Even I've had 5 years of this console, thousands of hours of use, I've dropped it multiple times, I've replaced the shell, but yeah, I've never had stick drift. And I know all of this might be a little bit boring to listen to, and all of our experiences are different, and I think it's important for you to know how my perspective on the Switch has formed, because it will differ vastly from many of you. I mean, maybe you loved the Switch from the get-go, and you followed all of the leaks and the rumours, and you watched the directs, and then you saved up and you pre-ordered it and you got it on launch. Or maybe you were younger and you just got it whenever and you grew up with it. Or perhaps like me, you picked it up later on and you ended up loving it. But whatever your relationship with the Switch, however, there will always be something on it for you. And I think that's just the reason why I think it's my favourite console of all time. I mean, there must be a reason why it's right on the heels in terms of sales with the DS and the PS2. The DS, I think, sold 154, 155. The PS2, Sony now say it's 160 million. And I think we're at 152 million now with the Switch. So there's a reason why people loved this device, and it's all down to the games. I mean, you've got the big hitters. You've got Mario Odyssey. You've got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. That's a brilliant game, especially now that you've got the kind of booster course pack. Then you've got things like Splatoon 2 and 3. You've got Breath of the Wild and its DLC, and then you've got the sequel. And you've got the kind of second party stuff, which honestly is so amazing. You've got like Xenoblade Chronicles. That is one of the greatest games I've ever played, and I've never finished it. I'm still going to say it's one of the greatest games I've ever played, just because of general lack of time. But it opened my eyes to an entirely new genre of games that I'd never really looked at. And then you've got things like Pokemon. Now I know Pokemon's kind of got some quality issues with how well it runs and performs on the Switch, but there's so many different entries on the Switch, you've got remakes, you've got the old style games, you've got new style games, you've got open world games. You're even getting a new game at the end of this year that comes out. It's coming out on the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, so they're still supporting it. And then that's not even then taking into account, I think one of the things that's given the Switch just massively long legs in terms of lifespan is the third-party stuff. So we've got it must be the best third-party support in Nintendo's lifetime. And if it's not the lifetime, it's going to be this side of the millennium. I mean, look at the third-party support for the Wii, the Wii U, and the GameCube. Nothing has been this good. We've got so many games to play. There's Skyrim, there's Persona, there's, some of my favourites are the Assassin's Creed series. I love that series. We managed to get the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th and the 7th instalments of the Assassin's Creed series all released on the Switch, not including the spin-off title, the kind of portable one that you had on the Vita, Liberation. And then you've got the impossible ports, the things that even people in the industry don't know how they've managed to fit such vast games onto the system, with things like The Witcher 3 or No Man's Sky or Hogwarts Legacy. They look a bit but just the fact that they are on there and you can play them portably, and the same thing that you would play Stardew Valley on, you can go and explore the massive world that is The Witcher 3, or the infinite world of No Man's Sky. And these are all massive games you never would have thought in a million years would run on the hardware, but it made it onto the system because of the developers putting in the effort. And it's for this reason, I think, that it's precisely why the Switch 2 is going to do so well. While many of the haters out on the internet like to pick on the Switch 2, they say it's slow and they say it's underpowered, I think technologies like AI upscaling, along with the continued effort from the developers, it's going to punch well above its weight, like the original did. The original didn't have any of these extra features to help it kind of upscale things. The only thing it really had was kind of variable resolution. But I think this thing is going to give even modern consoles now, and consoles still to come out, a big run for its money. And like I said, that's exactly what the Switch did. It started by running games designed... that's exactly what the Switch did as well. It started by running games that were designed to run on hardware comparable to the PS3 and the 360 generation. The game like Breath of the Wild was a Wii U game. The Wii U is, similar in specs to a PS3 or 360. So it started off playing games from that generation, and now it's still picking fights with the PS4 and the PS5. And yes, they're not going to look anywhere near as good as a PS4 or a PS5, but the fact that you can still play it, the fact that 8 years on, it's still being supported, you can still get games for it, they haven't forced you to upgrade to a new one, or been a bit pathetic like Sony and trying to shove you into a PS5 Pro that actually doesn't look that much better than the base console. You can just see the love that both gamers and developers, they both have for this console, and it's a love that I now share with you guys for it too. The Switch didn't start out as my favourite console, but somehow, despite the first impressions not doing me great and the build quality issues and kind of a lack of games being bought on my part, and I spent half of its life, I didn't play games at all, so just looking at all of that, you can see the Switch has just kept trying hard. It's been trying to give me and everyone else everything it had, and that's what's kind of led me to where I am now. We're right on the cusp of the Nintendo Switch 2. It's surprising to me even now how much I still play my Switch. I have a much larger console collection than when I started. I started collecting again almost 5 years ago, but I think that shows my love for the console. I started my collection with the Nintendo Switch, and even with everything else I've got a massive collection, but this is still the one I keep going back to, you know. And not only that, my life has changed around this console just massively as well. Like I said, I've got now a wife, I've got kids, we've just moved house, and so like many things in life, playing games and making videos, it must kind of find a way to slot around the adult things in life. But the one constant that I've had, the one friend who's been with me along and accompanied me through everything, all of the ups and downs that I've had since I've been getting back into gaming, it's tried its hardest to cheer me up when I was at my lowest. It was my Nintendo Switch. And I mean, that's the reason why I never upgraded to the OLED. But I can't help but think, you know, if an object, you know, a tiny little tablet that plays games can just fill me with this much happiness and joy, then wow, I can't wait to see where Nintendo and the Switch 2, where they're going to take us over the next 8 years. So I know this video has been a bit rambling, but in all fairness, it's quite difficult to compress 8 years of just console history generally and kind of personal history into one video. So I'll just kind of conclude with this. Nintendo, I am so happy that in a world where the gaming market is changing so rapidly, and one in which your competitors are struggling to innovate, you are still finding ways to bring the Nintendo charm into our living rooms and give us a taste of the old school gaming that we kind of crave and love. And I sincerely hope going into this next generation that you continue to do well and hopefully continue to give us more of what we love, instead of what the others seem to be kind of doing, which is trying to find more things to line their pocket short term. So with all that out of the way, we are now mere weeks away from the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm sorry the release schedule has been a bit dry up until now for the videos. I have been moving house and trying to get everything reset up for the launch of the Switch 2, but rest assured, regularly scheduled programming should now continue. Again, I know this one's been a bit rambly. Like I said, because we've moved, I've just kind of tried to throw something together, something quick that's not going to take me too long. But I hope you enjoy the video. And look forward to many more videos about the Switch 2 in the future. I have pre-ordered pretty much every single Switch 2 accessory, as well as the console. So expect lots of coverage when it releases, and in the meantime, I hope you're doing all well. I'm excited to be back from my mini hiatus, and I look forward to speaking to you all very soon. Bye bye.